We are now joined by Mike Davis of the Article 3 Project, my old friend. We call him the Viceroy, the most fearless legal operator in Washington, D.C. Mike, I know you have thoughts. I know you have thoughts on what happened to Jim Comey. He's been indicted, and I want to first get your take on the indictment itself. I see some people saying, well, this is thin. It's going to be hard to convict him in court out there in Northern Virginia. What's your take on it?
Well, I should not be so happy when someone is indicted, Scott, but I'll be very honest with you. I am very happy that James Comey got indicted because I can't stand the guy. I think he's a sanctimonious snake. He went after General Flynn when President Trump went into office the first time, and General Flynn was the incoming National Security Advisor, and James Comey bragged about the fact that he sabotaged General Flynn. You and I worked in the White House together. You know it's a tough job, and you don't need it to be tougher as a top presidential aide by having the FBI sabotaging you because the FBI director didn't like the fact that your boss won the election and not the person he preferred. And so I think this is just the beginning of James Comey's legal problems. You're going to see more investigations on Crossfire Hurricane that I've been calling for 3 years very publicly. And I think that's that case is going to be the much bigger problem for the Democrats.
I have seen some people speculating that this is what they were calling a holding indictment, that there may be other charges to be added to his case or to future cases. I'm not entirely sure what they mean. Is that something that's possible here? Is this just sort of like we're going to get this in because of the statute of limitations issue and then we're going to hang other things on it?
Yes, and I imagine there will be a superseding indictment of James Comey in the Eastern District of Virginia. Look, the evidence is very clear, Scott. He testified in 2017 to my former boss, Chuck Grassley, on the Senate Judiciary Committee, that he wasn't behind the leaks that were undermining President Trump, and then he lied then. That's beyond the statute of limitations of 5 years, so you can't charge him for 2017. But then Ted Cruz asked him in 2020 if he stood by what he said in 2017, and James Comey clearly testified that he did. That's perjury. Those are false statements to Congress. Now, the grand jury did not charge Comey with perjury. They charged him with false statements and obstruction. They declined to bring the perjury charge, and maybe that's because of what you're getting to, Scott. You're dealing with the Eastern District of Virginia, which is the suburbs outside of Washington, D.C. This Eastern District of Virginia is not as bad as D.C. I mean, Judge Jeanine Pirro is having a hard time getting indictments in D.C. for violent criminals. But the Eastern District of Virginia is not much better, right? So it's full of Democrats, including government workers. And so you have a Biden judge, you have a Democrat jury pool. It's going to be a tough case.
Okay, tell us about the prosecutor in Virginia, Lindsay Halligan. She's in the news now. She just got installed by President Trump out there. Do you know Miss Halligan? What can you tell us? The reporting is that she went into the grand jury personally and asked them for the indictment and got it.
Yeah, I know Lindsay, and I like her a lot. She's a bold and fearless warrior, as we just saw. Look, we have we have the uniparty in D.C., as you know, Scott, and even the Republicans in D.C., particularly the Republican lawyers in D.C., are cowards. And it took someone like Lindsay to go in there and bring justice. And, I like her a lot. She's a young lawyer. She was one of President Trump's attorneys. She worked, before that, she was in the staff secretary's office, which is a really important office. It's those are the people, as you know, Scott, who decide. They're oftentimes lawyers. Will Sharp is the staff secretary, and Lindsay worked for Will, and they're the ones who have to decide what the president sees and what he doesn't see for his sign off on key matters. Brett Kavanaugh was the staff secretary, and now he's a Supreme Court justice, and she's been Trump's lawyer in the past. I think she's great for this job. You need someone as the U.S. attorney who has good political judgment, good legal judgment, and who's going to implement the Trump Justice Department's policies.
I have been watching all the weeping and gnashing of teeth going on from all the usual suspects. A reporter actually asked President Trump on the South Lawn today if he was worried that in the future a Democratic administration might prosecute some of his people. Trump, of course, punted that question into the sun. But I do want to ask you about the allegation of weaponization. Do you reject that allegation? How do you answer that? And can you tell us, in an indictment like this, when you have an investigation like this, how does it get from soup to nuts, from beginning through the internal process at DOJ and to a point where a grand jury says, yep, we agree, charges are warranted?
Look, every indictment has a political element to it because the U.S. attorney has to make a decision whether to bring the indictment or not. You look at many different factors. You look at what the person did, what law that violated, how that affects the community, what would be the political repercussions if you brought an indictment, what would be the political repercussions if you didn't bring an indictment. So, yes, I mean, our criminal justice system does have a political component to it. With James Comey, am I happy that he got indicted? Absolutely. And for me, I think it's purely retribution. And I think retribution is a crucial component of justice because it restores the victims and it also serves as a powerful deterrent, right? So I hope these Democrats understand that they ran unprecedented Republican lawfare against President Trump, where they tried to bankrupt him for non-fraud. They indicted him 4 different times, tried to throw him in prison for the rest of his life for non-crimes. They tried to throw him off the ballot unconstitutionally in Colorado and Maine and elsewhere. President Biden underfunded Trump's Secret Service protection twice, said Trump was the gravest threat to democracy, and to put a bullseye on Trump and almost got Trump's head blown off twice. And so I think that's bringing much-needed accountability to these lawfare Democrats is crucially important. It's going to serve as a powerful deterrent. So these Democrats never try to do this again.
Now, I read the indictment, and in the indictment it says person 3. The allegation, I guess, is that Comey told person 3, which I assume is Andrew McCabe, to leak information to the media and then lied to, as you said, Ted Cruz on the Senate Judiciary Committee about it. In the trial, do you expect the prosecutors here to say, okay, we're putting Andrew McCabe up here as a witness and put him under oath and force him to answer the question, did Jim Comey order you to do this? Is that how this will go down? I mean, it doesn't sound all that complicated here. You have evidence, you have testimony, and then you have McCabe. Is that about what you've got here?
I think it's a pretty clean case. It's simple, just like you said. Did he tell McCabe to do this, and what did he tell the Senate Judiciary Committee? McCabe has his own credibility problems. He's been caught lying before, and I think that Comey's defense attorneys are going to have to they're going to have to go after McCabe's credibility on this in order to defend their clients, and they should. That's what lawyers do. Like I said, if this were in the if this were a prosecution in the Southern District of Texas or somewhere outside of Washington D.C., this would be a slam dunk case. You never know what's going to happen in the Washington, D.C. metropolitan area. You just have a different jury pool.
So you think more charges are coming for Comey, and I think a question that many people have is, who's next? Who else is on the block to be held accountable here? What's your prediction on that?
I have very publicly, for the last 3 years since the Mar-a-Lago raid, and my over 5,000 media hits, called for accountability for what happened on the Russian collusion hoax and Crossfire Hurricane. And I have very publicly called for the Southern District of Florida in Miami, the U.S. Attorney's Office down there, to open up a criminal probe, a special grand jury in Fort Pierce to investigate all of the Crossfire Hurricane conspiracy back to 2016. It would be in Fort Pierce because that's where they did the Mar-a-Lago raid to get back the Crossfire Hurricane records from President Trump that he was allowed to have under the Presidential Records Act. And I would say to Obama, Biden, Hillary, Comey, Brennan, Clapper, Jay Bragg, Weissman, Jack Smith, Benny Willis, Alvin Bragg, Tish James, Chris Mays in Arizona, Nathan Wade. There are so many people who are part of this conspiracy against President Trump going back to 2016. And I think the lawfare against President Trump over the last 3 years was to take him out politically so he can never get back into the White House and expose this Crossfire Hurricane conspiracy. I think that every one of those people I just named and many others should lawyer up, because I think that they are going to be called to testify before the grand jury.
He's Mike Davis. He's from Iowa. He's my old friend. We did work in the White House together under President George W. Bush. And in Washington, D.C., folks, they call him the Viceroy. You won't find a lawyer in Washington who's more of a bulldog or who has more of a pulse of what's going on in the legal community in Washington, D.C. Mike, where do we find Article 3 on the Internet?
I appreciate it, Scott. Scott used to be my boss to your listeners. It's Article. That was an impossible job to try to control this wild animal, but it was Article3project.org. Article number 3project.org. You can follow us on social media, sign up for our listserv, donate, but only what you can afford. I really appreciate it, Scott.
Thank you, Mike. Thanks for all the work you're doing.